Good morning and welcome. Welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. Today I'm with Hollis Pearce, who has been suffering from congenital muscular dystrophy. And he's also a disability advocate, a historian, and a host of his own podcast, The 21st Century Disability, where he explores how modern society is reshaping the way we understand disabilities. And one of the things we talked about is making voting more accessible for people with disabilities. And I wanted to get with Hollister and see how can we do that? How can we get more people involved in voting with disabilities?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of doubt behind online balloting, but I personally feel as though we should make it very accessible just through that medium and have a number of ways in which we could make it secure and safe. Yeah.
Absolutely, and the technology's there where you could vote on your cell phones, right? I'll use the term iPhones. The technology's there. It's extremely safe. You can't get in there without face recognition. The
Exactly.
technology's there. One of the things we talked about is Sadie Holtzmeyer, who also works with Ramon Perez on the Digital Democracy Project. It's all there. We've had them on the show, and we've talked about the security of this type of form of balloting. And I've always wondered about the challenge. Does either party want voting accessible, or do they not? Do they like the flaws in the system?
Yeah, I think they do. In all honesty, I'm a Canadian, so I think maybe American and Canadian political parties are a bit different, but I think in essence they're not. I think that they want to keep the ways, the same platforms because they have managed to get the same amount of success in the ways that they are using so far. And perhaps it would be they would fear allowing for greater access.
Absolutely. And like you said, when you talk about the word success, the fact of the matter is that we look at our political system today, we haven't seen a candidate really win an election in the longest time. So what we've seen is many lose, and ultimately, by default, somebody takes that position.
Yeah,
And so the more we make voting accessible, the more we make informed voters like yourself, the more we give more informed voters like yourself the ability to vote, the ability to just get on the phone and vote, the more we'll see a big turnout, especially special elections, midterm elections, local elections. One of the things we've seen is, generally speaking, we see a low turnout, and whichever party manages to, they call it go TV, whichever party manages to get their voters to get out and vote, get out to vote, go TV, get out to vote, that's the party that prevails. Whereas if there was a Hollis Pearce could literally get on his phone, if an elderly woman could literally just get on her phone and vote, we would see an enormous turnout and we would understand what the people really want. But like you said, they like the fact that these flaws, like I said too, they like the fact that these flaws are in the system. And that's how really they prevail often.
absolutely. Well, it's just like, for instance, Jeff, I could live next door to the balloting office, and I may not have signed up. Because of that, I didn't sign up for mail-in voting because I think, oh, okay, well, I can easily just go to the community center next door on election day and hand in my ballot. But then unexpectedly a storm hits on election day and I can't get outside during the election, and then I do not get to cast my ballot or express my opinion on who should hold office.
Right. Like you said, I mean, you're not able, in inclement weather, you may not be able to get to that election office, which is, we're just talking metaphorically speaking, but if it was really even right next door, if it was the building next to your house, the challenge of the inclement weather, considering the fact that you do have the dystrophy, the muscular dystrophy, could prevent
Yeah.
you from voting. And that's just speaking volumes for millions of Americans, for millions of voters, that anything can prevent them from voting. So why are we not just making it so much easier? We have the technology to do enormous amounts of things. Why not
Hmm.
just make it easier? A person like yourself wants to vote. You may know a local candidate that's really going to advocate for some of your needs, that's really going to advocate for maybe more public transportation for a person that needs a wheelchair lift. And you're going to really want to vote. Why prevent you? Why not make it easy on you to get the point that you want this person?
Yeah, exactly.
And so when we continue, we always see this. It's the elephant in the room. It's what's the big deal? Why can't we get our politicians to make the changes that we've all been asking for? And politicians really never do what we're asking for. They tell you they're going to do what you're asking for during the campaign, but then
Yes.
don't deliver. I mean, generally speaking,
Yeah.
they simply that's it. It's like you feel like their evil twin brother got elected, and you wonder what just happened. I sent this guy money. I talked to him in person. I went to his rallies, and now he's in office, and I can't hear from him anymore.
Yeah, well, and there's always numbers of political like campaign promises that oh, I'll do this when I will get into office. But then once they get into office, they drop that idea like nothing. And for instance, I'll give you an example, Jeff. I'm a liberal, and but in the very first election I had the ability to vote in, I voted conservative because the Conservative Party of Canada was promoting their idea that they would cut income tax in half for families that had a parent of div- of a child in need of care at home all the time. But did they do that once they reached office? A majority office? No, they did not. Even
They, no, they get to office. Like, so here you are. You're that person that could benefit from that tax cut. And
exactly.
you put all your faith in this political movement, not just the candidate, but the party itself. And it goes against every other thing you agree with, but you believe in this policy that would enable your family to have a better life. A 50% tax cut, and in Canada, I believe you even pay higher taxes than us, would make an
Yeah.
enormous difference in your day to day life. So you put all this faith, you change your whole mindset, you vote for the Conservative Party, and let's be clear, the Liberal Party would have done the same. They would have screwed you just the same. This is what we're up against. And so, like you said, and like you referenced, digital democracy, with digital democracy, you can literally watch what they're voting on. You can literally see how the politicians are voting. And if you know you voted for something and they haven't even brought your specific issue to the table, you can know that too. So why not have that clarity too? But it seems like it's the politicians that are blocking it, not necessarily the people. We all want this movement to happen, but it doesn't seem to ever happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what is a good example of what would work for you? If you voted for a politician that said, Hollis, what can I do for you? Is public transportation an issue? Is your medical expenses an issue? What is a good example of what would work for you?
Yeah, well, one issue for me, Jeff, is for instance, I live in Ottawa, Ontario, and in Canada, a lot of healthcare is provided by the provincial government, which would be a state government. For your listeners in the United States who are not familiar with provinces. And so I live on the province of Ontario, because I'm disabled, provides me with a Ontario disability support plan. And so with that pension plan, they help me pay for very expensive fees that I need because of my disability. For instance, my power chair that costs the same amount as a Hyundai to some. It costs $15,000 without specialized customizations. And this same pension plan that helps you pay for those things has such severe limitations. For instance, I can't earn more than $1,000 a month without being cut off. So basically, it is a pension plan that is, or it's a quote unquote support plan that is designed to keep you in poverty.
Right. And when you think of that $1,000 a month, let's just lose that figure for a minute. Hollis could actually do speaking engagements. They'd pay $1,000 an engagement. And you could
Exactly.
literally make $10,000, $12,000 a month. And yeah, you would still at that rate, if they allowed you to make that money, it still wouldn't pay for all your other needs. So you would still want your pension plan to not be touched. Even
Yeah.
though you're being a productive human being, you're bringing to attention a lot of important stuff to people. I mean, you could do engagements with young people at schools and talk to young people about how they, when they become older adults, how they can become political activists, or I like to call them social entrepreneurs, how they can create these movements that you're trying to create. But what, like you said, they don't want you to have that ability. It's like a petri dish for a total underclass. It's like they can't just, they give you something to survive on, but you can still prosper more, but they're saying no. And again, the question remains, why is that? Like, is it the deep state that some people like to refer to? What is the notion of just literally keeping people down?
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
What? And it's just fascinating to me because that's the whole reason I got into podcasting. It was like, I just want to hear what people have to say. I don't want to win the argument. I don't want to have an argument. I want to hear what
Yeah.
Hollis has to say. Temple Grandin was another one that's been on my podcast. She's a person that's challenged with autism, and yet she's prevailed just like you. Over the course of time, she's become a professor and an animal psychologist researcher and a writer and a researcher, and yet there was really the public school system didn't have much to offer, didn't facilitate her the way she should have been. And I always say, why don't we grow these programs? Instead of cutting, in America, we just cut corporate tax and the very wealthy tax, and we're going to bring in $4.7 trillion less in revenue over the course of the next 10 years. That revenue that we were bringing in from businesses never affected those businesses paying it. And frankly, they had loopholes to get out of most of it anyway. So they just gave them more loopholes and more ability to not pay taxes. And the movement just continues. The wheels keep turning. We got to screw more and more people so we can benefit the very wealthy and the very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, this same goes for, like, in terms of another thing that the government is controlling is that they don't allow, for instance, my wheelchair has tilt control. So, like, I can tilt back to relieve my body of pressure sores. But because I have a tilt wheelchair, the government always says, okay, if you want us to pay for 75% of that share every 5 years, you have to get it from this vendor. And by not providing competition to vendors, it doesn't allow for competition, and that would therefore lower the prices of these things. And also, it makes for other smaller companies to not get into the markets.
And you know what's so ironic about that is everything you're talking about Canada. You're a Canadian citizen in a province in Ontario.
Yeah.
Everything you're talking about is very familiar to America. Well, who is this vendor? How did they get this exclusive contract? I would love to hear the history of just that one particular argument that they deserve this one specific contract. And so your seat needs tilt, right? And like you said, because there's pressure points and there's pressure in certain parts of your body. When you tilt it back, release some of that pressure. I actually have sciatica. When I'm driving for long periods of time, I literally push on the chair and lift up a part of my leg and relieve the stress from that portion of the pain that's coming. I relieve the stress. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what you're going through. I don't need a tilt chair. I'm able to push myself up with my arm and kind of continue driving. But this is a necessary thing. And they've already put this stipulation in. The only way you're going to get this chair is if you buy it from this guy. And who is this guy? And how did they come to that agreement? I just would love to know that, because in America it happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and it's also, I mean, it's not even in, as you say, it is monopolization of government and licenses are everywhere. Like, even in Canada, for instance, if you want to watch an NHL hockey game, like we Canadians do, we have to now pay for a certain subscription package, and it is no longer available on the free government broadcasting system channel.
And again, so that was once an option, right? It was those
Yeah,
games were all played on the free government broadcasting network, right? Then
yeah,
suddenly some guy comes along and says we need the exclusive on our pay-per-views. And the government agrees to it for no other reason than he's probably. So in America, we have a thing. In the House of Representatives, which is that a new representative gets elected. The representatives that have been there, it's kind of like a prison gang. Tell them, listen, this is how you're going to vote. Now, you don't need to be here for this. You need to go across the street in a building that's not owned by the government. You need to start working the phones and bringing in money, because you can't
yeah.
raise money on government in government offices. So they have another building across the street where they have phone banks. And they're talking to people, just like you said, some cable network executive. I'll send your party 100 grand. I need you to vote for this initiative that says these games will only be played on our pay-per-view networks. Bing, 100 grand. I'm going to go walk across the street and tell them I'm a hero. She walks across the street and says, I got an agreement. I've already brought in 100 grand on my first phone call. Oh, honey, you need to bring in 10 million if you even ever want to see a committee seat. Okay, go hit the phones again. What other concessions are you? I'm going to make a concession that EpiPills are $12,000. Everybody gets screwed in the process, and yet it continues to happen, not just in America. It's happening in Canada. I'm sure if I literally got a guest from Azerbaijan or somewhere, he would tell me the same type of thing that's happening over there, because it's just. And here we are. I'm talking to Hollis, and one of the things that was very interesting is your positive attitude. One of the things I had read about you is how life goes on, with a challenge or without a challenge. You continue to live your life. But the simplest things that would make your life a whole lot easier are just being taken away by politics. And it's just how is it so familiar to me? Everything you're telling me, and you're from Canada, a province in Ontario, which I've actually never been to. I've been to Ontario. I wouldn't say I'm familiar with it because I grew up north, so we've been there a few times. And it's so similar to American politics.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah,
And so again, so now when you want to watch these games, you have to pay the subscription, right? So that's another expense out of your pocket, right?
yeah, yeah.
So what else would help you? If the movement was in reverse, if we were actually going to accommodate people and not politicians, not powerful, and not the very wealthy, what else would help Hollister?
Well,
Hollis.
as you said, yeah, public transportation and like this greater accessibility, period, but also like this whole during the pandemic, suddenly people could not be in the office to work, and everybody thought, "Oh no, this is gonna be so terrible. No, nothing's gonna get done, and the quality will suffer." But then all of a sudden they realized, wow, okay, people can get things done and with good quality in their own homes where they're not disturbed by others or distracted by lunches and different things like that. And now that the pandemic has ended, the Canadian government is now insisting on bringing everybody back to office. But for people with disabilities, for instance, that is not as good because I know my one friend, he's in a power chair like myself, and he almost died on the subway just because he was going onto the subway where there was the gap between the platform and the train was not small enough and so his front tire almost fell completely through and the door almost shut on him. And so, and not only that, when it comes to winter, because here in Canada, snow removal is a major issue because it's so damn cold up here. He has the ability, even though he's in a power chair, he has the ability to drive his van. But unfortunately, many people do not adhere to the parking directions and will park right beside his van and not leave him enough space for the ramp to pull out and him to get his chair in securely. And so he has to wait for hours sometimes for that individual to come and move their car.
And that's just incredible to think that people are that inconsiderate. Because first of all, you generally know what's a handicapped vehicle. Secondly, you generally know which door is the one that slides open and ramp comes out of. I mean, these are pretty basics.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so now all of a sudden they're like, oh no, but doing just good as good quality work as you were before. So, but we are paying rent for these offices. So let's just fill them up again and let the work quality suffer. And yeah, but we will just bring you back and we won't let you continue to work at home where you have been doing just as good.
That you just spelled out basically two kick in the nuts for a guy with challenges. First of all, like you said, you're a talented guy. If you even if you didn't have a job that went from office work to homework, and you're like, oh my god, homework fits me so much better, and then the random ruling comes out that you got to go back to the office, even if you just applied for a job today and you got the job working from home, whatever it is, Amazon customer service, whatever, you're not allowed to make the income that job will provide because you'll ultimately be in the negative, my guess is. Because, like you said, if it's a $20 an hour job and your wheelchair is $15,000, it takes 750 hours of work just to get your new wheelchair. And
Exactly.
right. So, this really, then the second thing comes along, and this is where the powerhouses come in. When there was this call to come back to the office, one of the first companies to do so was J.P. Morgan Chase. Like, everybody's got to come back to the office. The reality was the employees were doing just fine working from home, but the other reality was J.P. Morgan has loaned a lot of money out on commercial office buildings. And if they go vacant for too long, they're going to get a lot of defaults on that commercial real estate. So suddenly, you've got these new powerhouses saying everybody's got to return to work at least 4 days a week. And by next week, we'll implement it back to 5 days a week. And people like you, who are in the minority, frankly, there's not a lot of people with these challenges. You have no say in any of it. And that's why I say, why aren't our politicians listening to Hollis? Why aren't politicians not listening to the guy you just talked about that almost fell between the cars, the subway cars? I mean, first of all, the subway car should open, and a conductor who generally is doing nothing when people are getting on the train should be wheeling out some kind of metal ramp so this gentleman can just get in the subway, and none of this is happening.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it's so frustrating. And that's why one of the things, again, I just go back to the digital democracy thing, is where you can literally see where the votes are going. You can see what they're voting on. You can voice your opinion loudly. You can get together in groups. Hollis and his friends can get together in groups and say to these politicians, why have you not even brought to the table some of the things you told us you were going to do during the campaign?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really, it's just so frustrating the way that things are backloaded. Like everybody with power gets everything, and everybody that doesn't have a voice just simply gets nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Jeff, the crazy thing is that disability is the minority that always gets forgotten. The hilarious thing about that is that it is the only minority that every person on this planet will be a member of at one point or another in their lifetime. Even if you live healthy and you're into your senior years, as soon as you become a senior, technically you're disabled. And even if you think, oh, well, I'm not disabled, are you wearing glasses? Yeah, you're disabled because your eyesight is not enough on its own, is not functional enough on its own, so you need to wear glasses. But glasses are just so commonly used that we don't consider them to be a means of fixing a disability.
My mom, who's nearly 90, I guess, I'm not really sure about her age. She's over 85, and
Yeah,
she's a fall risk. So she gets
yeah,
bored in the house. She goes to the mailbox. The one time she fell was 2 months in rehab. And then there was a hip replacement. I always take care of her. And it's like, could you imagine if you thought of it in the sense of if we provided the simplest of services for all the elderly, some sort of somebody to take a walk with them, somebody to get to buy them a walker. My mom has the means to buy a walker cane. But the fact of the matter is that 2 months in disability was so costly that some of these movements would be cost effective to the point where there would be a return on the investment.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And the same thing with you. You're this talented guy. Let him earn whatever the hell he wants to earn. Continue to provide for him. What they're not. There's nothing coming out of somebody's pocket that's paying for your stuff. The tax dollars are there. The only thing that's happening now is the big movement is reducing the revenue coming in tax dollars. That's the biggest movement now across. Everybody's catering to the very rich. Everybody's saying the rich pay more than anybody, so we need to reduce their percentage to get that more in line. In America, they have this argument that people should only, America should be in line with the rest of the world at a 15% tax level. Well, the fact of the matter is, if I open a store in Dothan, Alabama, I'm going to do less business than if I open a store on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. It's the same thing as doing business in America. The 15% benchmark shouldn't be the way it is. You should have to pay taxes according to the opportunities that are provided you by the location. And let's just
Hmm.
get back to those basics. And let's just get corporate America to pay their fair share, and then we'll have the money to create an education system that works for all kids, a public transportation that works for people with disabilities, and let's stop the bullshit, really, that we don't have the money for these things.
Yeah, yeah. It is absolute bullshit, as you say.
I'll probably be canceled for that, but oh well, that's
Yeah.
fine. But really, truly, it's been an incredible conversation with you, Hollis. Like, again, what really doesn't work for you? Because it seems like we're at the same, everything is happening the same in Canada that's happening in the United States. It's really a great thing to think about how the whole world is screwing the pooch for no other reason than self gain.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You are, yeah, you're bang on. And this podcast is you're providing a great means of letting people tell their needs. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So the other thing we're doing, and we're moving closer and closer. I'm going to actually do the first one. So I'm Trippy. We're doing Trip Talk soon, and then we're going to invite a guest to come on, just like TED Talks, and talk about. And Trip is actually an acronym: teaching reality, integrity, and a passion for progress. So I'm going to invite you on once we get this thing rolling out to do a talk, a 15, 16-minute talk about how things should work for people like not we're all disabled like you said, but how things should work, how we should revisit some of the things that are happening today, because really that's what my podcast and really your podcast is all about, is trying to make people realize that what's going on just isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Hollis. So it's been a pleasure. Tell us more about your podcast, because I've talked enough about my podcast.
Well, yeah, no, my podcast is, as you say, it's called 21st Century Disability, and it's about how the modern world is changing the way society see disability, as you said. And because what I focus on in my podcast is the social model of disability. There are many models of disability in terms of like how you see disability. There's the more common and oldest form of seeing disability is called the medical model, which is looking at you as the problem. You have the disability, therefore you are the problem. Whereas I like to go by the social model of disability, in that, yeah, I do have the disability, but there are barriers surrounding me that are in my environment that are inhibiting me more than my actual disability would be inhibiting me.
And when you talk about the medical model versus the social model, it's kind of an interesting comparison because generally speaking, when you think of the medical model where they say you're the problem, that shows zero empathy, right? And so, and I made the biggest mistake of my life one time. I was actually running for office, and there was a big gathering at a local restaurant, and somebody asked me, and I didn't realize how conservative the room was. I should have realized just because of the area I live in. It wasn't far from my home. It's a very conservative county. Somebody asked me, what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican? I said, generally speaking, Democrats champion the vulnerable. Republicans work hard to see to it that there's more vulnerable. But the fact of the matter is that there really isn't that disconnect at all. The two parties work together to screw everybody. And that's where the frustration comes in, actually. Now, I've given up on both parties. I've given up on competitive politics, but I haven't given up on raising awareness. I gave up on raising money for my political runs. I haven't given up on raising awareness, and that's what my podcast is all about. Just like you said, before this podcast, whoever listens to this podcast can now understand what the medical model is versus the social model. We consider you the person, and we try to accommodate your needs, because the fact of the matter is you do have those challenges, but accommodating certain transportation needs. And the fact of the matter is saying, hey, Hollis, here's your money under any circumstance from the government. Go do good stuff on your own time and definitely get paid for it, because most of us aren't doing anything for free. And what would be wrong with just that one little inkling of a movement forward?
What would be, sorry, what was
Like if they just made that one concession, if your government passed that one rule, like you said, it's province specific. But if the federal government of Canada said, we are taking away the income restriction for people on disability, let them earn a living, let them earn whatever they can, let them write books. Your book could probably sell really well, maybe 1 million copies, and 50 cents a copy, that's $500,000. I mean, let Hollis do that. And he will still receive money for his wheelchair. He will still receive all the government assistance, the retirement, the benefit we give him. What would be wrong with just making that one inkling of a concession?
Yeah, I really have no idea, Jeff, because how is my income affecting your pension plan?
It's all factored in. And the fact of the matter is, when it comes to federal budgeting, there is no real bench lines. There is no real predictions, because when you think about federal budgeting, if the economy takes a shit tomorrow, the money coming into the federal government is going to be significantly reduced. So nothing's going to be affected. Somehow they're going to make good on all their commitments either way. So why?
And in fact, like, by allowing me to earn more, it will allow you to earn more, because I will then have the ability to spend more into your economy.
Right. Exactly. And who knows, you might be the guy that really caters to local businesses, because you don't get out there all the time. You might be the guy that goes to a local restaurant that just opened, not the Olive Garden that's 6 miles away. I don't know if they have Olive Gardens in Canada, but not the chain restaurant that's 6 miles away. I mean, you really could make a big contribution to your local community if you had more revenue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm really grateful for the time you spent with me. I know I did most of the talking, and I apologize for that, but I'm just really, I want to go ahead and get back with you and we'll do it again because I want to hear more of what you have to say on all these topics.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Hollis. It's been a pleasure. Your podcast is, I have it here. You can just jump right in and tell us how to get to it
It's
too.
21st Century Disability. And yeah, the website I'm on Instagram at 21st Century Disability. If you're on social media, also on Facebook, 21st Century Disability, just with the letters. And also, my website is 21stcenturydisability.com.
And we're gonna get people out there to check you out. Thanks, Hollis. We'll talk soon. This is Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. This was real. This was real. This was something really that hit specific to home for a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks, Hollis. Talk to you soon. Have a great day, sir.
You as well.